All right, let's talk about something that can be a huge challenge for all of us, making data actually tell a compelling story. Today, we're going to dive into a fantastic framework from the book Storytelling with Data that will help you totally transform your presentations. So, let's start with a problem that I'm sure everyone has faced. You've spent hours, maybe even days, digging through data. You find these amazing insights, these real aha moments, but then you get up to present them, and your message just falls flat. Why does that happen? You know this feeling, right? You're sitting in a presentation just drowning in a sea of charts and tables, and you feel completely lost. The presenter is showing you every little bit of their work, but you're just sitting there thinking, okay, but what's the point? And this slide frames the solution so perfectly. We need to think in two completely separate phases. First, there's exploratory analysis. This is the messy part. It's like having to shuck 100 oysters just to find two pearls. It's the hunt for insights. But then there's explanatory analysis. That's when you present only the pearls. It's about telling the story of your key findings. So the crucial takeaway here is really simple. Your job isn't to prove how hard you worked, it's to deliver the pearls, those key insights your audience absolutely needs to hear. Don't make them do the work all over again. So how do you actually make sure you're only presenting the pearls? Well, it all starts with context. It starts by asking three really powerful questions before you even think about making a single chart. Who, what, and how? Now, it seems simple, I know, but answering these three questions with absolute clarity is the key to everything. Let's see how this works with a real-world example. So let's imagine you're a science teacher. You ran a pilot summer program to get kids excited about science, and you've got the data to show it was a huge success. The problem is, now you need to secure funding to keep it going. First up, and this is probably the most important question of all, who? Who is your audience? And I mean, who specifically are they? You have to forget about vague descriptions like internal stakeholders. Get specific. Who is the actual decision maker in the room? What's your relationship with them? Do they already trust you, or do you need to spend some time building up that credibility first? So for our teacher, the audience isn't the parents and it isn't the students. It's the budget committee. They're the ones who hold the purse strings. Every single decision she makes from here on out has to be tailored specifically to them. Okay, once you've nailed down your who, then you can figure out your what. What exactly do you need this very specific audience to know, or even more importantly, to do? This quote is just so crucial. You shouldn't just share interesting facts. You're the expert, so you need to take a stance and guide your audience. Because if you don't actually ask for what you want, you're probably not going to get it. The teacher's what is crystal clear. It's not just the program was a success. It's a very explicit call to action. Approve our budget so we can keep this going. This clarity is what's going to drive her entire communication. And finally, only after we've locked in the who and the what can we start to ask how. How are we going to use data, and what medium are we going to use to make our case? You know, the how is also about the mechanism you choose, and this illustrates the trade-off brilliantly. In a live presentation, you have total control of the narrative, which means your slides can be very simple and sparse. But in a written document, the audience is in control, so you have to provide way more detail and context. And this leads us to a very common trap, the sliderment. You've all seen this. It's that super dense PowerPoint deck that gets sent around. It tries to be both a live presentation and a standalone report, and it usually fails at both. Why? Because when you're presenting live, people are trying to read paragraphs instead of listening to you. And when they read it alone, it doesn't have enough context. The solution is simple. Decide on one primary use case and optimize for that. For our teacher, the how is simple. She's got this great before and after survey data that shows how students' perceptions of science really improved. This data is the evidence that's going to support her story and justify her call to action. Okay, we've got our who, what, and how. Now it's time to put it all together and actually structure the story. This is the planning phase, and this is where the magic really happens. Before you even think about creating a single slide, you need a big idea. This is your entire story, boiled down into one single, concise sentence. And it has to do three things. It has to articulate your unique point of view, convey what's at stake, and be a complete sentence. If you can't nail this down, your message just isn't ready. And here's a perfect example. The teacher's big idea has a clear point of view, it states what's at stake, and it's a direct call to action. This one sentence is now the guiding star for her entire presentation. And here is a vital piece of advice: stay away from your computer. Seriously. The most important step here is to storyboard your narrative with something low-tech, like Post-it notes or a whiteboard. This forces you to think about the story's flow and its structure first, without getting distracted by fonts and colors. And it's so much easier to just toss a Post-it note than a slide you've spent an hour on. Your storyboard might look something just like this. Each note is a single idea or a single slide, and you can see the narrative arc taking shape. You start with the issue, you show the data that proves success, and then you end with a clear recommendation. It's the entire story mapped out visually. By focusing on the who, the what, and the how, you really can stop just showing data and start telling a story. You're no longer forcing your audience to shuck all those oysters. Instead, you're handing them the pearls. So you've found your pearls. What story will you tell?